Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another recommendations video. This one is kind of interesting because the only theme that there is that the books be over 500 pages, but it ended up that they're all dark romance because generally those ones are bigger. So yeah, generally contemporaries are like fun things, aren't this long. So yeah. These are mostly all dark romance, just so you know, and a couple fantasy romance because fantasy books are usually longer. But this was one of the recommendations that people put in my video of give me recommendations, and I really appreciate this. Sometimes I want a book that's really long because I know that there's going to be lots of character development, there's going to be lots of steamy time, so that there's room for there to be a slow burn, but yet it still be super sexy. So I also know that, I'm just warning you now, you ain't gonna see any Mariana Zapata on this list, but I know that that's an author that's a queen of slow burn and her books are probably all over 500 pages. But I'm gonna go ahead and I only have about 6 or 7 of these for you because there was a couple I thought would fit on the list. And then when I picked them up, they were shy of 500 pages. So we're going with ones that were over 500 pages. Or they're more than that. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first one I want to show you is a contemporary. It's kind of sort of dark, but it's mostly just dark because of the emotions and stuff involved. But that's going to be Our Way by TL Swan. This book came out in 2020. I really love this book. This book is about Nathan and I think we call her Lizzie or Izzy, Eliza. Yeah. And they've been best friends for 10 years and Nathan is gay. And they basically live together. Both of them are single right now. Nathan was in a long-term relationship that went badly for him, and so he kind of just fucks around whenever. And Eliza, she's had a few long-term relationships, but basically they're just each other's buds. They usually stay over at Nathan's house because he's a doctor and has a really great penthouse and all this stuff, and she practically lives there, and they even share a bed, and it's never been a big deal. They go on yearly vacations together, and this year when they go shopping for their vacation clothes, Eliza is trying on some bikinis and Nathan starts to get a boner when it happens. And he is just completely dumbfounded by this and worried about what it means because he doesn't want to mess anything up with Eliza, who is one of the most significant relationships in his life. So this is about his journey discovering what that means. And I've definitely went into deeper detail about this in other videos, but I thought it was really beautiful. TL Swan is one of my favorite indie authors, one of my favorite authors, period. I generally have wonderful things to say about her books. This one's great because it's a standalone and it's just freaking beautiful and I love it so much. And this is a thick boy. This is a thick boy. Most of her books are all on Kindle Unlimited as well, by the way, but I purchase her books because they usually have delicious boys on the cover, and I usually love them, so I'm slowly collecting her books. Then, let's just, like I said, we're going to stay pretty dark right here. So then I have Denim Vipers by K.A. Knight. This is also on KU. This is a reverse harem and one of 3 reverse harems I've read that I actually enjoyed. So keep that in mind. This is a mafia book. This has a kick-ass female character who her father pisses off the Vipers, who are the mafia, and it's these 4 blood brothers. 2 of them are actually brothers, but they're blood brothers and they run this mob. And so her father gives her to them. And when they send their cronies to go pick up Roxy, she does not go down with the fight and she actually kicks their ass. And so the 4 of them then, they hear about this woman who literally beat the ass of their men. She's a tough chick. She owns a bar. She is not a weakling at all. But she's no match when all 4 of the Vipers show up and literally punch her in the face and knock her out and bring her back to their lair, which is a apartment building where they each have their own floor and stuff. And it's crazy. It's sexy. There are many, many dark themes in here, but most all of it being consensual. And it's delightful. It is dark and twisty and terrifying, but it's absolutely delightful. And this cover is amazing. So this one is 630 pages long. So you definitely get a lot of time with each of the characters, which is nice for how many relationships we're having to maintain in it. There is no sword crossing in this book, though there are some threesomes. Then let's do a couple of the fantasies. So I Gotta Have a Heart of Blood and Ashes. I love how these are all black too. I have an aesthetic, it's a thing. This has to be on here. This is my favorite fantasy romance I've ever read. It is like 540 pages, and it is about Vane and Maddox, and they are enemies who need to have an arranged marriage to save both of their kingdoms. They need to save it from Vane's evil father, who kept her locked in a tower and tortured her and like starved her and abused her for years because she's the true heir to her kingdom because it's a matriarchy, but he has kept her weak and hidden so that the world wouldn't know who she is. And when she has the chance, she makes her escape. Unfortunately, it has cost Maddox his parents, who are amazing leaders of his country. And so when Maddox and Vane come face to face with each other, he is not ready to be trusting or willing to hear what she has to say or really wants anything to do with her. And so she has to plead her case and make him understand that we are better together than apart. And this book it's fantastic, and there's a reason why you don't hear many bad things about this book. There are a few people who don't like it, but most of my friends have only loved it even more the longer that they've been with it. And I'm actually rereading the second book again in February, and I'm so excited because it doesn't have these characters in it. There's some crossover, but the second couple is also delightful. They just don't get quite as much love because Maddox, I understand. But they're just, it's such a well-written world, and if you're someone who loves fantasy and you love romance, like you have to try it, okay? Like you have to, because if you're unsatisfied that adult fantasies don't have enough romance in them and YA fantasies are too childish, like this is what you need. This is the book you need, okay? You need it. Sticking on the fantasy track, I want to mention House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. So this book, I don't talk about this book too much. I do have a dedicated like reading blog and review. I think it's a review for this book. Sarah J. Maas like was my intro to fantasy romance. Like once I realized that like, oh, it can be a thing that there be just as much romance as there is fantasy in a story. Well, this story is a little bit like a fantasy mystery for parts of it. It is very sexy. And from, like, this is just the first book in the series. The second one is coming out, I think, at the beginning of next year or the end of this year. But she says that book 2 of this series has the most sex she's ever put in a book. And this book was still really sexy, and I loved the romance. It has a lot of longing. It's between a disgraced angel and a half-fae, half-human. I can't remember exactly what Bryce is, what everything is. And they're trying to solve the mystery of who killed her best friend and her pack of wolves. And Bryce gets roped into it because she was the one to come across the killer as they were fleeing. But then she doesn't remember a lot of what happened. And so our hero, whose name just flew out of my brain, Hunt, our hero, Hunt Ackroyd, he is sent to kind of like be her bodyguard and like help her figure this all out. And there's so much more going to it than that, but I put off reading this for so long because I always get nervous about like when a favorite author tries something new. I'm just really hesitant, but I devoured this book. It is like a 20-some plus hour audiobook, and I slowed it down. I never slow books down. I slowed it down so that I could just savor the words being spoken. And I freaking loved it, and I can't wait for more. And it's great. And it definitely fits in being a big book. So then there is Captive by R.J. Lewis. This one you would have to get on Kindle. And I actually bought the audio for it. So this book is hard because I don't want to spoil anything. This is a captive book with a twist. And all I can say is like, there's a twist because I won't ruin anything. But right from the beginning, we start with this girl who's being held captive by this kind of like, he's not a mobster, but he's like a criminal and he has his own private island. And so she's on this island where even though there's other people, like they all work for him. And so no one would like help her escape. But the thing is, we're not sure if she really wants to escape or not. This book is told in 3 parts. It's told in present time, past time, and then later on in the future. And it wasn't until we're in the middle of the past time that you really understand what's going on for these people. And this was suggested to me by a viewer. And it blew my fucking mind. And I loved it. I have tried another R.J. Lewis since then, and I haven't loved it as much, but she has a lot of books that all are just twisted and not what you would expect. And so I highly recommend this if you like Captor Captive, and I encourage you to get through 50% before you make a thought on it, because I was reading it because I love Captor Captive. So I was like, I'm into this stuff. I'm into the non-con, the dub-con happening, because it is more dub-con than non-con, but the way the author writes it, you might see it as non-con because the narrator is unreliable. So I'll say that there is the female narrator is unreliable. So it isn't until we start expanding out and seeing more that we realize what's going on. So I'll say that, because I started this book and I was like, whoa, what did I walk into? I don't know what's happening, but I really loved it. And then the last one I want to talk about, and really, I picked this one because this one is the one that's over 500, but I mean, you do need to read other books in the series, and they're all pretty big. But my favorite in the series, and a book that actually got 6 stars for me this year, is Dead Man Walking by Giana Darling. So this is book 6. This is about Priest and Beatrice. Beatrice is actually the younger sister of one of the heroines earlier on in the series. And he is the enforcer and torturer for the fallen MC. And he is a twisted motherfucker. Like, I was so excited for this book, but I was also nervous because I liked the first 2 books in the series. The 3rd and 4th book, like, didn't really do anything for me. I liked the 5th book. And then I was excited for this one because I'd seen Priest interact with people differently. This book has lots of trigger warnings. There's blood play. There is, like, rough BDSM elements. There is murder. There's a serial killer in this one. But I just love how fearless Giana Darling is. And she just gives me so much, like, joy reading this book that's just so twisted and fucked up. And I really, really liked it. And I know that there's going to be, like, more in this series still. And I love it when, especially when it's an indie author who's just like, I'm just going to keep writing. There's more couples still to go. I don't need to stop yet. And I love that because you get so invested, and she has such a rich world. So even though there are books in that series that, like, didn't work for me, I always still keep going because this one is my favorite. Like, I loved it. The heroine is, like, seen as this, like, good girl, but she secretly likes twisted guys, and it gets her in a bad situation in the beginning of the book that causes her to interact with priests in a way that they, like, don't want to happen. And then he ends up being her protector, kind of. And that causes a lot of issues because Zeus is married, like, this is his sister-in-law, like his young sister-in-law, and he's like, hey man, obviously I don't have anything to say about the age gap here. This one isn't even the biggest age gap, because I think she's 20 and he's 30 or 28, so it's not the biggest one we've seen. Like, definitely not the same as, like, Zeus and his wife, where it's like 18-year difference or something like that, more maybe. But he's still like, she doesn't have anyone to speak for her, so, like, I'm her oldest male relative. And Priest is just like, well, you're my prez, like, we'll do what we got to do. But also, Priest is just dark and twisty, and I love that he's like a guy named Priest who just has no religion, and Beatrice is just fearless. And so it leads to some really sexy sex and some really amazing situations for our characters. So there we go. This was a pretty quick video because these are all books that I have kind of talked about in other things, but maybe you didn't know they were over 500 pages. Maybe you just like to really dive into a character the way that I do. So I just wanted to throw some out to you. And let me know some of your favorite tomes. yeah, these are really fun. This is a lot of book, you know. This is a hefty amount of story. So thank you so much for watching this video. I put in videos 3 to 4 times a week. Make sure you check out channel memberships if you'd like to be interacting with me more than you do. Check out my links down below or in my link tree, as well as any rep codes or things that I have for boxes are down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.